both very traditional in their own way. I'm very excited about both of them, but they're very, very, very different. In the 1970s, Pak Chung-hee decided that Koreans needed rice to eat, and they should stop using it to make alcohol. Because, you know, eating is probably more important than getting drunk, I guess, but it really affected makgeolli production. And one way to make up this loss of rice in makgeolli was to substitute wheat flour. And so a lot of the makgeollis we know and drink, you know, just from the supermarket or from the mini mart today, have that milkaru, the flour background there. And they're using flour to sort of build the flavor. But a very traditional makgeolli, one that predates that period, is going to have no wheat flour in it. And more importantly, it's not going to have one very modern ingredient. Most makgeolli nowadays are flavored partially with aspartame to give it a little bit of sweetness and round out the flavors. This one right here, which I love how old school the label is. It looks like something that predates the 1970s. It looks old-fashioned. This is a very traditionally made makgeolli, right down to a homemade nuruk, a homemade malt. And it's rice,
Yes.
and it's got tapsai rice, which is sweet rice or glutinous rice, which you see them, they look almost like a boreo. They're these round little grains, and if you cook them up, they've got a lot more sweetness and more stickiness than the standard medium grain Korean rice. And more importantly, they don't use any aspartame to flavor it, which is really unusual. Virtually every other makgeolli you'll ever drink will have aspartame in it to help round out the flavors. And when you taste this, it is immediately apparent that it's nothing like a typical makgeolli that we're used to drinking now. These 1970s and after produced makgeollis don't taste like this. This is very sour. It's very light, it's very refreshing, but it doesn't have the heaviness of a typical makgeolli, and it doesn't have any of the sweetness. This is the first makgeolli I've ever had that is completely unsweet. It's sour, it's got that rice background flavor to it, very light, or at least it seems light. When you first drink it, it seems very light and right on the tongue. And it's only on the second or third sip you realize it's actually got a lot of body. It should be a heavy makgeolli, but when you taste it, it doesn't feel that way. But there's a lot of body, it's very thick, but it doesn't seem that way when you first drink it. It's really unusual. And I really, really like it, but it is, to be advised, very sour and very atypical among modern makgeollis. It's a really different drink, but I really, really like it. I love how unpretentious and really brazenly sour this one is. It's not sweetened up, it's not trying to kiss up to you. It says, I'm an old-fashioned makgeolli. And you just have to enjoy it for what it is. This one, this is a very classic example of the kind of makgeolli that grew out of this prohibition on rice drinks in the 1970s. It's about 20% milkaru, so 20% made with wheat flour. And this is done because Koreans tend to like a very full-bodied makgeolli. And so they add the milkaru to bulk it up, to make it feel bigger and rounder than it would be if you just made it from rice. And just as I said, this one tastes very thin at first. This one, when you first drink it, has all that fullness, all that roundness, all that sweetness that you don't get with this one. So this is much more representative of modern makgeolli from the 1970s onward. And it does have its merits. It's a really easy drink to drink. If I was going to have friends over who'd never had makgeolli before, I'd probably want to give them this one. But if I wanted to give somebody something really interesting and different to drink, I would definitely go for this one. It's a really big difference, and it's like you can feel the difference that one change in law made to makgeolli just by drinking and comparing these two, and it's just amazing.